An American F-35 stealth fighter was reportedly hit by Iranian fire over central Iran, and what happened next is the part nobody in Washington seems eager to explain. The jet was forced into an emergency landing at a U.S. airbase in the Middle East, and this may be the first confirmed hostile strike on a U.S. aircraft since this war began 3 weeks ago. But here's the question that should make everybody stop for a second. If America really believed Iran's air defenses were already finished, then how did a stealth fighter still get hit? And why does the official story suddenly feel incomplete? Because once you look at the timeline, the entire picture starts to shift in a way the Pentagon probably does not want in public right now. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps wasted no time. They issued a formal statement claiming direct responsibility for the strike. According to their statement, the F-35 was engaged around 2:50 a.m. local time over central Iranian airspace using what they described as an advanced next-generation air defense system operated by the Revolutionary Guard's Aerospace Force. Iran claimed the jet suffered serious damage, and they even suggested the fate of the aircraft remained unknown, with a high probability of a crash. They also said the strike came after their forces intercepted more than 125 American and Israeli drones. Then came the footage. Fars News released video that appears to show an infrared tracking system locking onto an aircraft, followed by a surface-to-air missile striking it on the left side. The final frame seems to show what looks like a fluid leak beside the engine heat signature. And if that footage is genuine, then this is no ordinary battlefield clip. Before we go deeper, join the conversation in the comments below. Do you think this war is about to drag on much longer? Or are we getting closer to a ceasefire? Comment your opinion and subscribe so you never miss what happens next. Now the real question is this: is the footage real, or is this another overclaim from Iran? Open source intelligence analysts have already started weighing in, and their early assessments matter. OSINT analyst Jake OSINT said the interface generally matches electro-optical and infrared systems known to be in Iranian service. He noted that the clip does not appear to be AI generated, and that the post-impact physics are too complex for the kind of military simulation software often used to fake combat footage. That is not confirmation. But it is enough to say the video deserves serious scrutiny instead of being dismissed out of hand. And that is exactly where this story becomes more dangerous, because Iran has a history of claiming more than it can prove. Earlier in this war, Iranian-linked sources rushed to take credit for 3 F-15E Strike Eagles that went down on March 1st. Those turned out to be Kuwaiti friendly fire, not Iranian action. The IRGC also claimed responsibility for the KC-135 tanker crash in western Iraq on March 12th that killed all 6 crew members, but CENTCOM later said that crash was not caused by hostile fire or friendly fire. And back in October 2024, Iranian media circulated images of supposedly downed Israeli F-35s that were widely assessed as digitally fabricated. So yes, Iran has overclaimed before, but this time something feels different, and in a moment you will see why that difference matters more than almost anything else in this war. Here is what CENTCOM actually confirmed. Navy Captain Tim Hawkins said a U.S. F-35 was flying a combat mission over Iran when it was forced to conduct an emergency landing at a U.S. airbase somewhere in the Middle East. He confirmed the aircraft landed safely and that the pilot is in stable condition. But that word, stable, is doing a lot of heavy lifting. Stable is not the same as uninjured. Stable is not the same as everything is fine. Stable is the word militaries use when they want to say the person is alive without saying anything useful about the full situation. And notice what is missing. The specific F-35 variant, the branch operating it, the extent of the airframe damage, and the exact airbase have all been withheld. When the Pentagon has a clean story, it usually gives details. When the details disappear, the story is not clean. Now look at the timing. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth had told reporters that same morning that the U.S. was winning decisively. He said the day would bring the largest strike package yet flown over Iran, and he used the word flattened to describe Iranian air defenses. Not degraded, not suppressed, flattened. That is not careful military language, that is victory language. And that declaration came after the F-35 had already been hit. The incident reportedly happened around 2:50 in the morning local time, hours before Hegseth spoke, which creates an immediate credibility problem. Hours after the aircraft incident, he was still telling the world that Iran's defenses were flattened, even while the military was apparently still figuring out whether Iranian fire had damaged an American fighter. That does not prove he lied. But it does show the public message may have moved faster than the actual facts. And the story gets even stranger from there. That same afternoon, President Donald Trump stood in the Oval Office alongside Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba and told reporters, "Their Navy is gone, their Air Force is gone, their anti-aircraft equipment is gone, their leaders are gone. We are flying wherever we want. We have nobody even shooting at us." CNN's Daniel Dale flagged the timing. Trump made that statement just minutes after the network broke the F-35 story. Nobody even shooting at us. That line sounds powerful until you ask what was actually happening in Iranian airspace only a short time earlier. Stay with me, because the technology that likely put a hole in that aircraft is something Washington has known about for years. And the reason it worked tells you more about the next phase of this war than anything being said at the podium. Here is why this matters. If the IRGC claim is authentic, then this is not just a propaganda moment. CENTCOM itself confirmed the emergency landing. 2 separate sources pointed toward Iranian fire. The video has passed initial open source scrutiny, and the pilot is in stable condition, which means this is at least a serious incident, whether Washington wants to frame it that way or not. The most important part may be what actually hit the plane. Tyler Rogoway, editor of The War Zone, pointed out that if the video is genuine, the tracking system shown appears consistent with a passive sensor. That means infrared and electro-optical guidance instead of radar. And that one detail changes everything. The F-35 carries the AN/ASQ-239 electronic warfare suite, built to detect, jam, and neutralize radar-based threats. If a ground system is radiating radar, the F-35 has a chance to detect it. The pilot gets warning, the aircraft can react, but a passive system gives off nothing. No radar emission, no obvious signal, no easy warning. That does not mean the jet gets no warning at all, but it does mean the usual stealth versus radar advantage becomes much less useful. This is the same category of threat that Houthi forces in Yemen have used against American MQ-9 Reaper drones. It is not new, it is not a fantasy. And it is exactly the kind of vulnerability experts have been warning about for years. Rogoway had already warned on March 5th that Iran has road-mobile air defenses capable of hiding, moving, and appearing where they are least expected. He said Iran also operates more exotic systems, including loitering surface-to-air missiles, and that pushing manned fighters into direct attack roles over Iran does not make those aircraft safe. That warning now looks a lot less theoretical. Most people think the F-35 is untouchable. They think stealth means invisible and electronic warfare means invincible. But the F-35 was built to defeat radar, not to defeat a system that barely uses it. And if Iran has deployed passive infrared-guided missiles from road mobile launchers, then destroying fixed air defense sites may not solve the real problem. You cannot bomb a launcher you cannot find. You cannot jam a signal that is not there. And every aircraft that flies over that airspace now carries a risk no amount of stealth shaping can completely erase. That brings us to the bigger system Iran still has in the field. The Bavar 373 is Iran's most advanced indigenous air defense platform. Tehran markets it as a local answer to Russia's S-400. And while that comparison is debatable, one thing is not debatable. The system is road mobile. The upgraded Bavar 3732, unveiled in February 2025, reportedly features independent launcher stations. Each transporter erector launcher carries its own radar, which means even if the command node is destroyed, individual launchers can still function on their own. Iran claims the system can detect targets at 450 kilometers, track them at 405, and engage beyond 300. Independent analysts put the realistic engagement range against an F-35's reduced radar signature closer to 90 kilometers. But 90 kilometers is still a serious kill zone. That is enough to matter. That is enough to threaten an air corridor. And that is enough to turn every mission into a risk calculation instead of a show of force. Now comes the financial shock. The F-35 program has cost the United States more than $1.7 trillion over its lifetime. It is the most expensive weapon system ever built in human history. A single airframe costs over $100 million. If the weapon that hit it was a surface-to-air missile fired from a road mobile system, the missile probably cost a tiny fraction of that. That asymmetry has defined modern warfare for years. Cheap drones against expensive interceptors, low-cost missiles against high-end defense systems. But this is the first time that imbalance may have reached the stealth tier. A system costing a fraction of its target may have punched through the most advanced airframe on the planet, and that should worry not just the Pentagon, but every ally watching this conflict unfold. Because the battlefield is no longer only about airstrikes. It is about credibility. It is about deterrence. And it is about whether the strongest military on Earth can still control the narrative when one of its most advanced fighters comes home damaged. 19 days into Operation Epic Fury, the U.S. says it has struck more than 7,000 targets across Iran and its military infrastructure. It also says it has damaged or sunk over 100 Iranian naval vessels, and Israeli intelligence claims Iranian missile production has been driven to zero. CENTCOM Commander Admiral Brad Cooper says 70% of Iran's missile launchers have been neutralized. Those are major numbers. But they are not the whole war. 13 American service members are dead. Around 200 have been wounded. 5 KC-135 refueling tankers were damaged on the ground at Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia after an Iranian missile strike on March 15th. Iran has struck Dubai International Airport, hit airports, diplomatic missions, and energy infrastructure across the Gulf. Drone strikes have affected facilities in the UAE and Bahrain. The U.S. Embassy compound in Baghdad was bombed. The British base at RAF Akrotiri in Cyprus was hit. The Strait of Hormuz remains contested. Gulf oil exports have dropped by at least 60%, and not a single close ally has joined the fight at the level Washington hoped for. Britain refused to send minesweepers despite a direct request from Trump, who called the UK the Rolls-Royce of allies. The EU's top foreign policy official said plainly, "This is not Europe's war. We did not start it. We were not consulted." France parked the Charles de Gaulle in the Mediterranean, but is not escorting ships until the fighting eases. China ignored the request entirely. Trump's trip to Beijing has been delayed by a month. And then there's the ground question. The IRGC released a separate video this week showing a commander from the ground forces looking into the camera and saying, "We have been waiting for this day for years." At the same time, the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit out of Okinawa, along with the Tripoli Amphibious Ready Group, has been moving toward the region. The USS Tripoli was spotted approaching Singapore. If a ground component is coming, Iran is sending a very clear message that it has spent decades preparing for exactly that moment. And that is what makes this more than an air war. This is now a regional tension with global consequences. Fuel prices, shipping lanes, military credibility, alliance pressure, and strategic deterrence are all being dragged into the same storm. Meanwhile, Trump's own top counterterrorism official, Joe Kent, resigned saying Iran posed no imminent threat and that the war should never have been launched. That resignation matters because it shows this conflict is not just testing weapons. It is testing confidence inside the American system itself. So here is where we are now. The plan was flattened air defenses. The reality is an F-35 was reportedly forced down over central Iran on the same morning that claim was made. The plan was nobody is even shooting at us. The reality is CENTCOM confirmed an emergency landing from suspected hostile fire before the president said those words on camera. The plan was 4 to 5 weeks. The reality is day 19, with the 31st MEU deploying and no clear exit in sight. The plan was total air control over Iran. The reality is road mobile launchers, passive infrared systems, and a $100 million fighter with a hole in it that Washington is not fully explaining. The plan was Allied support. The reality is Britain said no, France said not yet, China said nothing, and Europe said this is not our war. And that leads to the one question nobody in America seems ready to answer. If flattened still means an F-35 can get hit and nobody even shooting at us still means a pilot in stable condition at an undisclosed base, then what exactly are they going to say the next time one does not make it back? Subscribe to Market Mindset for more updates like this. Like the video, share it, and leave your opinion in the comments below. Do you think a ceasefire is coming soon, or is this only the beginning? I want to hear what you think.